This is your 420 Radio News for Thursday, January 16th, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson has decided that Initiative 502 that legalized recreational marijuana does not prevent cities and localities from banning marijuana sales. Quote, although the law establishes a licensing and regulatory system for marijuana producers, processors, and retailers in Washington state, it includes no clear indication that it was intended to preempt local authority to regulate such businesses, end quote, Ferguson stated. Initiative author Allison Holcomb responded, quote, the initiative explicitly and specifically gives the Liquor Control Board the task of providing adequate access to licensed sources to discourage purchases from the illegal market. It is hard to see how allowing cities and counties to ban stores does not directly conflict with this provision of the state law, end quote. The opinion is not binding, but some advocates fear taking the issue to court may invite the possibility the whole commercial marijuana system is invalidated due to conflict with federal law. Colorado, unlike Washington, explicitly allows localities to opt out of marijuana sales, and many have, including the state's second largest city, Colorado Springs. The mainstream media is beginning to pick up on the marijuana theme of a Denver Broncos-Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl. In his monologue Tuesday, late-night talk show host Jay Leno joked about, quote, a whole new meaning to the term Super Bowl, end quote. And the Sacramento Bee interviewed officials from NORML and Marijuana Policy Project about the possible matchup of the two teams from America's two largest legal marijuana cities battling it out for the NFL championship. And in Colorado, the Boston Herald is reporting on New England Patriots fans in Denver already stocking up at the city's legal pot shops. Quote, we had 45 people from Massachusetts today. I'd say at least 80% of them are here for the game, end quote, said the owner of Mile High Cannabis, just across the street from the formerly named Mile High Stadium, home of the Broncos. He also said, quote, we saw 250 to 300 San Diego Chargers fans last weekend. I know for a fact we're going to see well over 300 Boston fans, end quote. A review panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals let stand today 3 previous rulings by lower courts that rejected appeals by medical marijuana dispensaries. At issue is the pressure used by the federal government against landlords of marijuana dispensaries and the dispensaries themselves for violations of the Controlled Substances Act and other federal laws. Dispensary attorneys had argued for an injunction from the court against the federal government, citing constitutional issues that they believed should have allowed California's Compassionate Use Act to protect the dispensaries. The judges ruled yesterday that no new arguments had been raised, the constitutional issues raised were moot to this application of the law, and federal law still trumps state law on this issue. State Senator Dianne Savino of New York has said that the recent plan by Governor Cuomo to use the so-called Olivieri law to provide access to medical marijuana at select New York hospitals is, quote, unworkable. She also said, quote, if I thought we could do it through the Olivieri law, it would be great, but we've looked at this, consulted a few attorneys, it's not possible, end quote, said Senator Savino, who is sponsoring a medical marijuana measure again in Albany. She also continued, quote, hospitals can't distribute medical marijuana, period. They are federally licensed facilities. The federal government will happily come in and shut them down, take their licenses away, and take away their license to distribute other scheduled drugs, which they can't afford to do, end quote. Senator Savino also doubts the hospitals would have any marijuana to distribute anyway, saying, quote, you can't transfer marijuana across state lines. Again, it's federal law. The idea that we would allow a hospital to distribute marijuana that's been seized in a drug raid and give it to patients is absolutely absurd. Nobody knows what's in that stuff, end quote. Baltimore City Delegate Kurt Anderson has proposed a bill in Maryland to legalize the recreational use of marijuana. Quote, we say let's have the government regulate it and tax it. We can raise more than $100 million a year. We'll stop wasting law enforcement resources, end quote, said Senator Jamie Raskin, a Democrat from Montgomery County. Baltimore's own Neil Franklin, head of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, explains, quote, 60% of the profits made by drug dealers out there today come from marijuana sales, end quote. Sarah Love, head of the Maryland ACLU, added, quote, in Baltimore City, African Americans are 68% of the city. They are 92% of all marijuana arrests, end quote. Despite growing support for legalization nationwide, the bill still faces stiff hurdles in the form of opposition from the Speaker of the House and the Governor. This has been your 420 Radio News for Thursday, January 16th, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. You can read all of our news headlines in their entirety at National Cannabis Coalition. Visit ncc420.com to read up the 420 Radio News every day. When we come back, we go behind the headlines to take a look at the recent trend in abandoning medical marijuana bills for CBD-only bills. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org. We'll be right back.